Hey Diana, did you know that growing your law firm is not always such a great idea?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, the podcast for lawyers and law firm leaders about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I am your stupendous super lawyer host, Marc Whitehead, along with my number one, my COO, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana, what's up?
Not much. I like the new intro, Mark.
I know. So this week, for the umpteenth time, I was named a Texas super lawyer. And I've expressed many times my sentiment that I question the validity of this award.
I didn't know if you were going with hashtag humble brag or like, okay, this is where we're going with that.
So I get it. There are some requirements to becoming a super lawyer, but mainly I think it's a big money grab on the part of the publisher. And I see all of these people out there saying, so honored to be named a super lawyer again. And I'm like, are you really that honored? I don't know. This is me being a 33-year-old curmudgeon, I think.
Wait, 33-year-old?
33 years into the practice of law. I'm
All
sorry.
right.
I wish I was 33 again. My hips
Do
would be a
you
lot
though?
better if I was 33 again. Anyway, and I guess I shouldn't denigrate it because, one of my lawyers was named super lawyer in addition to me, and
Congratulations, Brittany.
she deserved it. Brittany deserved it. I just
As do many other super lawyers, Mark.
I know they do. I just get a little irritated with it after they name you super lawyer. Then they want you to come stroke them a big check, and I'm like, that's where I start to this whole pay to play thing. I start to get a little. We digress. I don't even know why we're on this topic.
Well,
Oh,
congratulations.
you know what I did this week?
Not come to the office.
Not come to the office. So first of all, I was in Orlando. Day and a half at Atticus with my fellow Attic cousins,
I'm sorry.
planning,
Glad to have missed. Yeah.
planning. You didn't make it, but planning the Q4, making the Q4 plans. And then my wife came with me. So we did the Atticus couples workshop where
How did that go?
you plan my great decade as a couple, which, apologize. I'm sitting here I'm just so all choked up just because I had such a great time. Only one person cried during the event.
Wow.
It was Craig
Was
Golden
that you,
Farms.
Mark?
No, it was Craig Golden Farms' wife. Got a little weepy. So there's 10 couples, and it was conducted by Steve Riley and his wife, Kristen. And it was basically a day and a half workshop where we kind of went through a lot of exercises with the couple, how to handle conflict, how to communicate better with each other. We went through each other's discs. They did a disc profile and comparison for each couple.
Very
So,
cool.
so Tina and I looked at each other's discs and, how do you talk to each other? That sort of fun stuff. I know we've talked a lot about disc on this thing. And then at the end, you come out with what they call My Great Decade, which is basically it's similar to My Great Life, but it's as a couple, we plan out everything that we want to accomplish over the next decade. All the fun stuff, all the travel, all the hanging out with the grandchild, all of that kind of stuff. And it's kind of eye-opening because sometimes what you think you want to do is not exactly aligned with what your spouse wants.
Yeah, I can see that.
So being together, in this sort of structured workshop, we actually came out with a written plan. So we are launching that plan this week, fixing to go to France on a couple's vacation.
Very cool, Mark.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my week. So I didn't get a damn thing done at the office.
And you
Um,
won't get a damn thing done in the next couple of weeks either.
next couple of weeks either. So anyway, so I was, it's by the time this podcast comes out, it will already be over. But so tomorrow I am teaching another workshop with Denise Cullen here in Houston, an Atticus program, not called Migrate Life. It's basically a, it is sad. I can't remember the name of the program I'm going to teach tomorrow.
Because they just rebranded it, that's
Well, they
why.
rebranded
Because
it.
it's not the
It used to be the double your revenue thing. And it is now called, I'll pull it up, a roadmap for law firm and personal success.
I love it.
So that's the new program. And it is slightly different from the double your revenue workshop. But anyway, I look forward to it. Denise and I are going to get together tonight.
For the
Go
second time or
and
third
go.
time because y'all have taught double your revenue
Yeah, we've
before.
taught it before. So anyway, we're going to get together tonight for dinner, and we're going to go through the program outline.
Good.
And we're going to do tomorrow at Randy Sorrell's office. Shout out to Randy Sorrell for letting us use his conference room. So, but anyway, none of that is about what we're here to talk about today, Diana. Diana, what are we here to talk about today?
Scaling your law firm.
Oh,
Should
beautiful.
you do it or should you not do it?
Right. So I think this is almost like point counterpoint. Um, I'm always about scaling. I'm always about growing, and you're always cautious. You always caution about don't grow too fast, don't scale too fast. And I'm always just like go go
Let's
go.
go.
Let's do it. Let's go. Double double double. So this
Yeah.
should be an interesting podcast because we come at this from two different perspectives, I think.
You know, I wouldn't say two very different very different perspectives. What I will say is that before we started our EOS journey, golly, probably 2 years ago now, well, like calendar years now, you and I had a lengthy, probably discussions, repeat discussions over a year, where I basically begged you not to grow. But now I'm fully on board and I'm good with it because and I think this might be the point of our podcast is you shouldn't grow without making sure your profitability is there. You know, I think that was my point, that I could absolutely get Mark more money in his pocket before we went on this growth track. And you know, especially Mark, where you're, you know, the circles that you run in, I'm not making fun of anyone, for any of our listeners that I also see at all these places, like your Atta cousins and your, you know, your Pilma masterminds. But every time we get together, it's how are you doing? How many new offices do you have? What's your head count? How many new cases do you have? And how many, you know, all these different things. And y'all treat
You see, we're
y'all
all flexing our muscles in front of each other to see how big we're all getting.
exactly.
It's an
Not that,
ego
but you
trip.
said it, I didn't.
It's an ego trip, and we all know it. We all know it.
And that's why I think that we kind of, as you know, law firm, well, I say we, I think law firm owners kind of get into this trap that you must scale before realizing that you can actually put more money in your pocket before you start growing your law firm, and that growing your law firm without certain things in place can be kind of dangerous. You know, I think there's a quote out there from Howard Schultz, the former CEO for Starbucks, that said, you know, growth for the sake of growth is not a strategy. Growth has to be disciplined and sustainable. And I think that
Coming
that's
from
the way.
Starbucks, who just announced this week that they're closing a bunch of stores.
I think he's the former CEO, so I think I could be wrong. He had to come back in and kind of take care, rebrand a while back in the early, to use Mark's words, early aughts. He had to come back and rehandle the Starbucks again. All that to say, though, that there's a lot of reasons to not grow, or why you should not grow. And Mark and I are going to go over three, maybe four of those reasons today. Mark had three reasons. I threw a fourth in there, and I'm honestly surprised, Mark, that you didn't come up with the fourth one on your own. So y'all stay tuned and for my fourth, and see if it should have made Mark's three.
All right. So you disabled my mouse on my computer screen. So I'm all of a sudden sitting here trying to think, how do I navigate?
I've messed with Mark's world, and it's
My world has really gotten screwed in the last days because they, unbeknownst to me, converted me over from Windows 10 to Windows 11, and now nothing frickin' works on my computer, and I am just pissed beyond words, but
which is always fun for the rest of the team.
I will get over it, I suppose. Stop moving my cheese. So,
Which ironically is what growth does. So Mark doesn't like his cheese moved, but whenever he insists on growth, growth, growth,
I'm
he is
perfectly willing to move your cheese. That's different.
100%. Absolutely. And I think that scaling's about replication. That's the word that I would just kind of make sure, but replication in a very smart way, like just making sure you're not
Yeah.
following the same patterns, because your business is going to have different tranches, for lack of a better word. So we'll talk
So,
about that later.
so I would point out one thing, and I don't know where I heard this from, but it must be true because I got it off the internet. Um, some astonishingly large percentage of businesses that go bankrupt have, just within the past few years prior to their bankruptcy, had really grown rapidly, like doubled in size. They double in size, and all of a sudden they go bankrupt. And how does that happen? And it is exactly what you're saying. You have to be careful not to grow too fast, because growth, you businesses are in the business of making a profit. We're not here just to be here and take up space. You got to make a profit, and you have to maintain cash flow, and growth sucks cash. Um, and yes, I may be able to double my caseload, in 2 or 3 or 4 years, but do I have the cash and the infrastructure to support it? Um, and that's always the balancing act. So, like you said, you could have made me more profitable when you came in. I could have put more money in my pocket, or I could have chosen to reinvest into the firm and grow the firm. So it's a balancing act of which to do and at what rate to do it in. I used to think that we should double in size every 2 to 3 years, which would be great. But I've since toned that down a little bit, realizing that that really, really stretches our limit, and puts our cash flow, quite frankly, in danger. So I've kind of toned it down to more like a 15 to 20% growth rate, year over year, which is more like, if I'm doing my math correctly, sort of like potentially doubling in size every maybe 5 to 6 years instead, at a more steady pace. So anyway, Dinah's going to take us through this, and she's going to put the brakes on Mark's plans to rule the world.
Stay tuned.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead and Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting, and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today, and know that your clients will be in good hands.
And we're back. All right. So aside from us discussing lunch over the break, Diana, what are we talking about here? To give us your breakdown of Diana's rules about growing too fast.
I don't know that there are rules, but here are some common pitfalls, maybe, or some things to be concerned about before you grow. Lessons we've learned the hard way. So again, I think we still share a lot of war stories these days, Mark, or war stories from our ADA cousins, or that we've heard from other PILMA mastermind members, or just either other PILMA members. But just 3 to 4 pitfalls. And so the first one, Mark, it's either hiring too fast, growing too fast, versus making sure you have solid systems.
Right. So the pitfall is that people will just throw bodies at the problem. And just thinking, I'll just, and really what I think what you're trying to say is, before you throw a body at the problem, work on the systems and the process.
Yeah, what I
And
would
then
say is
hire
that
people to run the systems.
I would say make sure you have a very solid foundation. I mean, obviously, as the integrator on the call, I would say make sure your foundation, i.e., your systems, are very solid. When I first started, Mark, you said, "Okay, well, I want to know how many, for example, social security cases I have to bring on before I have to hire another person." And yes, we have a quote unquote KPI where every, call it, three or 400 cases, when our case managers get to a certain amount of cases, we start looking at whether or not we need something new. Nowadays, we don't say it's a new body in the exact same position. So, for example, when I started, it used to be, all right, Diana, when we brought on 200 more SSD cases, we need a brand new case manager, almost plug and play. Now, with the advent, obviously, of AI, and also just the sheer scale of your business, your SSD caseload, Mark, we don't just plug and play a brand new case manager every time we reach, X number of new cases. We look at whether or not we can scale from the bottom with our junior virtual assistants, or do we need to create a new layer at the top, either a new team lead or a new special person, for example, like a new appeals specialist, or do we need AI to help us at that particular volume? But using the same formula without considering that every level of growth has a new, what I call tranche, I think is one of the pitfalls of growth. We talked a little bit about this at Pilma. Oh, I forget. I think it's the Ward Law Firm, and I'm sorry if it's not you guys and their listeners, but they did a really great presentation on, this is what you need when you're 2 to 10 people, and this is what you need when or 10 to 50 people. These are like, when do you need a director of operations versus a COO? When do you need to, have a marketing director versus a CMO, and those types of things.
Right. And the problem I see with law firms, and the problem that I have been guilty of in the past, is we grow so fast that we just panic, and we got to have more people, we got to hire more people, and we hire too fast.
Mm-hmm.
And we live to regret those hires. And hiring is, this would be its own separate podcast series, but um, you know hiring is always a gamble, because you're bringing a new person into your culture. How's this person going to perform? How's this new person going to affect your culture? The morale of the team, all of these fun things. Um, you know, and there's no perfect system for hiring, but there are things you can put in place, hiring processes that will improve your odds. It's kind of like, in baseball, you know, do you want to hire a 250 hitter, or you want to improve your odds and find a hitter that's hitting 300 or 320 or something like that? It's never going to be perfect, but if you take your time, you can improve the odds of success. Um, what's the mockingbird of the may the odds be in your favor. Try to
I
do what
didn't
you
think.
can to put the odds in your favor, and taking time and being intentional and being very careful about who you select to enter the hallowed halls of your law firm is very, very important.
Yep, Mark, I think that you hit the nail on the head, especially in this increasingly robotic or AI world, that protecting your culture, which used to be just kind of some soft talking point that every CEO paid homage to, like it's now actually one of the most important things you can do, because customer service, I've already said this before in one of our podcasts, that I think that the next decade is going to be a return to authenticity. I'm going to TM that. If I didn't TM it then, I'm going to TM it now. The next decade is going to be the return to authenticity, because everyone wants to know that what they're looking at, whether that's a picture or the information that they're getting on from a Google link, is actually real. Is it authentic? And so the only way you can deliver great customer service is by having really good people. So make sure that you protect your culture, and also don't ignore turnover. I think that's one of the most important things. Don't just say, okay, well, that person left for higher pay, or that person left, because they, got their dream job, or whatever the case is. Sometimes they do get their dream job. That just happened to us. And I realized it really was her dream job. It really was. But like, make sure you do an investigation.
Yeah.
Do you have a manager problem? maybe, or training problem. Before you can grow, you have to know the answers to these questions. I think there's Indria. I'm going to mess up her name, but she's the former PepsiCo CEO. Indra Nooyi said, "You can't scale what you haven't mastered. Get the basics right and then expand." And I think that that's, in a nutshell, what we're talking about here.
Mm.
Don't hire or grow too fast before you've made sure you've got solid systems.
Right. We talk about culture, and it's kind of, I'm just digressing a little bit, but we're in the customer service business. So, and most of our staff are what I would call client facing staff. Most of our staff deal with clients on a daily basis. There's very few positions within the firm that we can sort of tuck away, if they have sort of a non-customer service personality. There's very few people that we can kind of hide away from the customers. So, I always think, in terms of culture, you should, as a service industry, which is legal is we have to develop a culture of customer service. So what was the book, hospitality that we
Unreasonable hospitality.
unreasonable hospitality. So
Did you actually read it, Mark?
I read the Cliff Notes,
Oh my gosh, you
but
bad
more
Atticus student.
importantly, so you missed this, but so they showed us a clip from the TV show, The Bear. Have you watched this
Yeah.
show?
What my husband watched it.
Yeah, so there's a clip on how this 4 or 5 star restaurant, I don't even know what the star rating in New York, that everybody, that's month-long waiting list to get on, the amount of extreme hospitality that they go through to create these experiences for people. And so that's what we were talking about at Atticus this past week, is like, you need to establish this in your culture of extreme hospitality, because this is exactly what you are. You are a customer service business. And what I have seen is when we hire too fast, we skip that part. We hire for technical competence and we forget the cultural part of customer service. So that was just kind of, I'm digressing slightly, but this was just something that kind of hit home to me this past week at Atticus, is that's kind of the number one thing that we should be hiring for. We're in the customer service business.
No, absolutely, and look for that podcast on unreasonable hospitality and our takeaways from that book coming soon. Mark, what's our second kind of pitfall to growing too fast?
So you've got to fix your intake and operations before spending more money on marketing. And this is the trap that lawyers fall into constantly. They just want more cases. They want more cases. They want bigger cases. They want better cases. They feel that is the solution to all of their problems. If I just had better cases, if I just had more cases, all would be well. And the problem is number one, you shouldn't spend $1 on marketing until you have your intake processes locked down and tight, because you're just throwing your money away. If you can't handle the intakes, if you can't convert them into signed clients, you're just wasting your money. And then if you sign up the cases and you can't handle the cases, now you're just, now your customer service is going to suck. Your Google ratings are going to suck. Ken Hardison tells the story of Pilma about when he first started advertising on TV, I think back in the 80s, when nobody advertised on TV. And he went from signing up 10 cases a month to signing up a couple of hundred cases a month. And he damn near bankrupted his firm
Mm-hmm.
because he just couldn't process those cases. He didn't have the money. He didn't have the bandwidth. He didn't have the staff. And, the way he would tell it, he damn near, got in trouble with the bar, although I think he probably embellishes that story slightly. But anyway, I've heard him tell it like 10 different times, and he tells it differently every time he tells it. But as an example of what we're talking about, of growing too fast. I mean, he had found this shiny object, which was the time TV. I mean, today TV sounds like old hat, but back in the 80s, TV was a new thing. And just it damn near did him in.
Yeah, I definitely think that especially CEOs, firm owners, y'all can get very guilty of bright, shiny object syndrome. And I think that's why it's good to make sure that you're.
I would question that. I have seen a certain COO get a little infatuated with a few shiny objects. So it's not just us. Take it back.
But
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah,
that by the time.
you know.
Okay, so here's what I'll say. So by the time I bring it to you, I've probably done 2 or 3 demos, and I finally allow my excitement to show. I am, to your point, the whole reason why we're doing this podcast is because Mark and Diana disagree. To your point, from the very beginning, I am very cautious about growth and new technology, especially because you understand what it's going to do to your team. So, Mark, we've talked about Peter Drucker before. I forget which book we did on his because there's so many, but he says that there's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all, which I love. And I think that that reiterates kind of sort of what we were talking about in the first point, that as you grow, you're gonna need to let go of some of your existing processes and find new ones. And so you've got to make sure that your intake and your operations are really solid. Again, I guess is what I would say. Because you most certainly do not want to scale flawed processes, even if they stay true. So, for example, you can probably go from 10 to 20, maybe. We certainly went from 35 to 50. I did that here, 35 to 45, probably 35 to 50, and things still works the same. We
Yeah.
didn't have to really change much.
So I would expand that slightly to say not only necessarily, expand flawed processes, but um, obsolete processes. So, like yesterday, we were talking with Mickey Love, who has consulted with our firm on operations, and we were sitting there talking about ways to do what we do better on the operation side. And she just interjected, "Well, you know what? Since we last talked, there's a new AI product out there that could totally alleviate the need for even having that department." And I'm like, and this was in 6 weeks. We were talking about this 6 weeks ago with her, and then within 6 weeks, a new product has come out and said, "Oh, I changed everything I said 6 weeks ago. There's an AI product that'll take care of this." So, sometimes it's not that the process is a bad process. The process just has become obsolete because technology has changed so rapidly.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And so, I think that one of my big points for this particular
So
point
don't
would
it's not
be.
only don't scale a flawed process, don't scale an obsolete process.
Absolutely. And I would also just, I mean, we say this I feel like we say this every every podcast, but know your KPIs for every single position before and make sure you're consistently meeting them before you start to start growing or spend a dollar on marketing.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know your KPIs, you're just not going to be able to grow.
What's next, Diana?
So your third point to not growing would be my point actually.
It's your point. It's not my point. This was your point.
Well, I took Mark's initial thoughts and I ran with them and
Yeah,
created
she
an
ran with it.
outline.
So yeah, so
But
you own them now. You totally own them, lock, stock, and barrel.
well, that's fair. But I think it's actually ironic because my point was exactly the point. Your point was the point that I was making a few years ago, which is you can say no to growth and yes to profit. And I think that that's sometimes the better path for law firm owners. Michael Porter, who's written some books on strategy and competitive advantage, says the essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. Scaling without strategy is just a race to the bottom. And sometimes, so I would say, and we've talked about this one ad nauseum too, but when you don't have the right people in the right seats. So this is an EOS principle that we say again probably too much every single time, but I cannot emphasize it enough. When Mark and I did our little visionary integrator discussion, I think one of our takeaways was if you don't have an integrator and you're considering growth, get the integrator, then grow. Right, Mark?
Right. Somebody has to execute on the vision. And typically the law firm leader, the visionary in the firm, is just not going to have the bandwidth to execute on all of the great ideas about how to grow a firm that you can. In our case, I have to have multiple people. I have to have you as the integrator within operations. We've just hired a new marketing director, which, will be our integrator with regard to our marketing efforts. I simply don't have the bandwidth to do all of these things. But you have to have the right people in place first before you can make these next big moves. And what I also want to say is it kind of depends on where you are in your life cycle. Now, I figure I have another 20 years left in me and I'm still in growth mode. But let's change the equation slightly. And let's say I'm closer to 70 and I'm looking to, maybe shore up my financials and cash out over the next few years. I might change my philosophy, as opposed to spending whatever we spend, $1.5 million a year on marketing. Maybe I scale that back to half that and take that other half and stick it in Mark's pocket and maybe shore up my finances, maybe pay off some debt, as I move into my golden years and become more financially stable. Um, so again, it depends on where you are in your life cycle. Um, are you trying to sell your law firm? I mean, one of the key strategies when you want to sell your law firm is you want to make it as profitable and efficient as possible, and you want to cut out certain fat. Um, so if you're in that mode, if you're in sale mode, taking some of the flyers that we take on some of the wild things that we do, probably not the best time in the world to do it. You want to get, number one, you want to look good on paper so you can get the best sale price for your firm. So it depends on where you are in your life cycle as the owner of the firm as to how aggressive you want to be on the growth side versus how conservative you want to be and be more profitable in the moment.
Yep, and I think that another example would be on the opposite end of that, where, you were probably, I don't know, 20 plus years ago, where you were both CEO and rainmaker for the firm. If you are still both of those things in your firm, it's going to be very hard, I think, to scale your law firm because it's going to completely dilute. I mean, if you go back to our cash flow quadrant episode, or, it's just, I would go back to that one where we talk about how you were just going to be stretched way too thin as both business owner and rainmaker. So, I think that also make sure you have strong middle management before you go ahead and grow. Mark has been spending a lot of time with our team leaders for probably 2-3 years now. Mark, we've been doing that monthly lunch.
Yes.
And yep, that was really all intended to not only solidify that relationship with Mark. What do you call them? The sergeants in the Army?
The sergeants in the Army, the sergeants run the Army. That's an old saying that my uncle used to say, which I'm sure he got somewhere else. And by the way, he was a sergeant.
I'm sure that's not any coincidence.
Yes. So he was a sergeant. And of course, the sergeants believe they run the Army. And, most good generals will tell you that the sergeants run the Army. So, but the reference is a good, strong middle management. It's your middle managers really run the firm.
Yep, and so make sure you have that in place, or at least you've got a plan to develop them before you start growing. And then I guess before we kind of wrap up our third point, Mark, just also beware of market saturation and or market elimination. So I think we've talked to this before, but market saturation, I don't know that growing, if your entire practice is car wrecks, is necessarily the best idea.
Yeah. And I know a lot of my friends will disagree with me on this point, but I mean, CarX is a dying business. John Morgan himself, I heard him on a podcast the other day. He's building his firm to move away from CarX. It's just a dying business. Cars are safer, cars are becoming self-driving, you know, just a ton of reasons why it's in the long run, and the long run, I say 10, 15 years, it's a dying market, and just you have more and more people feeding for fewer and fewer cases, quite honestly.
Yep, and so that would obviously be one of those reasons where market saturation slash elimination, and elimination would be potential elimination under our theory, would be one of those reasons before
Tort
considering growth
tort
and increasing
reform.
profitability.
Yeah.
Exactly. Mark, you lived that one. Tort
Yeah,
reform and
that's what
typhoon.
got tort reform is what got me out of the PI business. I mean, in Texas and between 2003 and about 2007, somewhere in that neighborhood. I mean, they really just screwed things up. And I just said, I know a better way to make a living. Now, a lot of people stayed in that market and just toughed it out because that's what they knew and it's what they wanted to do. But I just said, I'm getting out of there. So,
Yep. So I would just say that be completely candid about your market and your team before you decide to grow, and any potential weaknesses in both. And
yeah.
so, Mark, since this is my outline, you told me it was my outline, right?
Yes, it is your
Um,
outline.
I You said three reasons though to be wary of growth. I threw in the fourth one, which was ironically again because you didn't read my outline
I
before
did
our
read your
podcasting.
outline. I
Um,
read it 5 minutes before.
so the fourth point that I would say is if you're not managing cash flow, and so somehow this didn't make your top three, but Mark, just bring it home for us. If you're not managing cash flow, don't grow.
Right. So growth sucks cash. That is the axiom of all axioms. I mean, we're a contingency fee law firm. It takes us 18 months to 24 months on average to get paid on a case. So it just the simple math is if I pay X number of dollars to generate a case in 2025 and I'm not going to get paid to 2027, what am I going to eat for the next 2 years? I have to keep my expenses in line with what my current cash flow allows. And there's so many things about cash flow that people lose. I know we did an episode on this before, but people don't factor in Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam is going to take probably a third of every dollar yet on the profit side. If you have a line of credit and you have to pay back your line of credit, you're paying back principal. That's not a deductible expense. If you're fronting case costs, those case costs are not deductible. That comes off the bottom line. All of these things suck cash, and suck it really, really quickly. So you have to always balance how aggressively you grow. And when we say aggressive growth, that typically means spending a lot of money on marketing. That's
Exactly.
typically what we're talking about. And in turn, once you spend a lot of money on marketing and sign up, and hopefully your marketing does well and you sign up a lot of cases, now you're going to be spending a lot of money on labor and overhead, all of which you're going to have to float for 2 years before that case comes through. So, these are all things you have to manage, to make sure, it's great to have 200 cases that are going to make you a lot of money one day. But if you go bankrupt before then, what good did it do you?
Yep, exactly. And that was episode 53, by the way, for all you
Oh,
listeners
yes,
that want to
episode
go back.
53. I see the note in your outline. Episode
Episode
53, where
53, where
we
you
talked
talk about
about
cash
cash
flow.
flow.
Yep. And so the quote that I wanted to share with our listeners is control your expenses better than your competition. That's where you find the competitive advantage by Mr. Sam Walton himself. So,
Yes.
Mark, one of the things that I wanted to make sure in closing up this part of the segment for our listeners that we talked about in episode 53, your how you keep maybe one of the 90 to 120. I think we did a 120 cash flow projection to make sure you always had cash.
Right. In theory, you want as much as you can get, obviously, but you need 90 to 120 days of cash flow. Let's assume that the cash stops. Oh, but what if you had a government shutdown like we're doing right now? And what if you had a practice that relied on the government to pay you like we do right now? We are 2 days into the damn government shutdown. What's going to happen to our cash flow? You know, who's going to cut our checks?
Yep.
I don't
Two
know.
governmental practices.
Do you? Two of our three practice areas are governmental practice areas, and we're right in the middle of a government shutdown. Our today, Good Morning America says probably going to last at least 6 weeks. So that means we're going to go 6 weeks probably without getting much of anything in terms of getting paid the money that we're owed. Can I float 6 weeks without getting paid? Well, fortunately, yes, I can, but only because I plan for it. Only because I know, because this is not the first government shutdown we have gone through. We have gone through this, in 33 years. I've gone through probably 5 or 6 of these where we're not getting paid. And ultimately we're going to get paid. I know that. It's just we're going to have this big gap, in our cash flow, and you have to be able to float it. So, I got we have reserves that allow us to float it for 4 to 6 months. I can't imagine it's going to last more than 4 to 6 months, but we can float 4 to 6 months if we have to.
And on that note, I'm gonna go breathe into a paper bag because Mark's also going to Europe for 2 weeks when the middle of this government
In the middle of a
shutdown.
government shutdown, I'm leaving the damn country. Okay, this country is going to hell in a handbasket. They can't even run the government, so screw y'all. I'm going to Europe where they know how to run a government. Thank you very much. That's my hot take on politics right now.
And when we come back, we're gonna talk about our 5 takeaways.
This is Marc Whitehead, lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast. If we've stirred your juices, hit me up with an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Remember, Marc is spelled with a C. And get on the Successful Barrister newsletter mailing list. Even better, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you about working together, talk shop, or just shooting the breeze.
And we're back. All right, Diana, we got to finish up strong here with our 5 action steps going forward. And I'm going to let you take the lead on this one because I think
Wow.
this is you have the best ideas. So I'm going to let you go first.
I think it's because I literally was panicking over break about you being gone in the middle of government shutdown, but that's
Did
okay.
you not think about this already? Was this not on your mind?
No, sir,
Did
but
you do you not read the newspapers
I
or
did.
whatever counts as a newspaper these days?
Well, return to authenticity TM. I don't trust all the news. But anyway, yes, I
If
did know we were in
it's
the
on the
middle of a
internet, it
government
has to be
shutdown.
true.
I also think we're gonna get some checks.
My experience was the last government shutdown was we still got paid. We just got paid much slower. So
I
we're
think
gonna get it. We're gonna get it. It's gonna
you
come.
just didn't have to, like, do that to me. Okay, guys,
I gave you hives when you started thinking about it. I know. So I'm
and that's
sorry
why I get to go first.
I ruined your day. So you get to go first.
So my first takeaway is that remember that growth is the reward, not the goal. Don't grow for the sake of growing or for having some flex in front of all your other CEO law firm buddies. Really be, if you're growing intentionally, I think that's much more. That's better than growing just saying, "Hey, yeah, I opened another office today and I increased headcount and I increased my case count by all of these things and these percentages." Growth is the reward, not the goal.
Gotcha. So mine would be don't get caught up in the bright shiny object syndrome. And I know you accuse me of this all the time of chasing shiny objects, and so I view it differently. I say I just make calculated decisions, kind of like R&D money. I have a certain percentage of my marketing budget that's just set aside for testing wild ass ideas, and I know that they probably won't work, but again, firing bullets, not cannonballs. So just small little tests, but the premise is sound. Do not get caught up in shiny object syndrome. I'll give you an example. 3 years ago, everybody was falling in love with programmatic and OTT TV ads. Everybody was just falling over themselves over it. I held back. I was not convinced that that was going to work. And I know all these people who just spent bukus of bucks on it. And I was listening to Ken Hardison's podcast today. Like they've all lost their ass. Nobody's made any money on OTT. Now, that's not to say that it won't work eventually as consumer preferences change over time. But as of this moment, it was the shiny object. And I would like to say that I actually made a good call and chose not to go that route. And I saved myself a lot of money and a lot of heartache. Trying to think of a shiny object that I did chase. Geofencing.
Oh,
That was the other little shiny object, is that you would geofence on the internet, different places like hospitals and things like that. And that was supposed to bring you all of these cases and all of this great stuff. Yeah, I wasted money on that. That was a shiny object that I did chase. Not work. Live and learn, live and learn. But I didn't overinvest. I tested it. I didn't spend more than I could afford to lose. It's kind of like going to Vegas. Don't bring more than you can afford to lose.
That's a great growth rule. So my third takeaway would be to again, unsurprisingly from the COO on the call, on the podcast, know your KPIs and make sure you're meeting them. Like actually know them, have them be measurable, and actually measure them and then track them and have them be met. More than one quarter. You're looking for at least a couple of quarters, maybe three on a runway, and then consider growing. Because then you have a very solid, then if you're meeting your KPIs, that you have, if they're the right KPIs, that you've got a solid intake and a solid operation system.
Right. Manage by the numbers, not by your gut. You need to know what the numbers say. Your gut frequently will fail you. It will lead you in the wrong direction. So always know your numbers. So my number 4 on our list here is know your market and your team and be very clear about the weaknesses in both. Again, as I said earlier, I sensed a weakness in the PI market in Texas based on tort reform, based on excessive competition, based on, just extreme aggressive marketing by just a lot of people. And I said, I just don't want to compete in that particular market. I know of markets that are easier, less competitive, more profitable, more focused on the long term. In disability law, we're all getting older. The population's getting older. So my case, my potential out there is growing, where the car wreck practice is shrinking. Same thing about your team. Know what your team is capable of. Know the weaknesses in your team. We intentionally stay away from certain types of law because I don't think that our infrastructure is built for it. So we're very intentional about the areas that we practice in, and very intentional about some of the areas that we choose not to practice in based on what I think the strengths of our organization are.
Yep. And then, our one of our added cousins, you got to see him down in Florida. I guess I had it wrong, but based on the law change in Florida, his entire practice area was not eliminated, but it made it less profitable.
Right. They basically eliminated the right to recover attorney's fees in certain types of insurance cases. Which I was like, well, welcome to Texas. We did that decades ago.
Yeah, and so I think that would be one of those things where, at least our Atta cousin has spent the last year or two really kind of, he didn't just, decide to grow or shut down in either way. He really
He
just
just
kind of,
retrenched. I mean, he had to learn to practice law a different way. He's still in the same practice area, but he just had to learn to practice law a different way. When attorney's fees are not recoverable or not easily recoverable, I guess. I'm not sure if I know the law 100% in Florida. It changes the business model.
absolutely. And so I think our fifth takeaway, Mark, is to keep a 90 or at least a 91/20, rolling cash flow projection.
So 3 to 4 months. Keep 3 to 4 months of cash flow available.
Exactly. And if you want to go back and watch or listen to episode 53 on cash flow, that's really where we dove into Mark's lessons on cash flow. But you definitely don't want to fly blind. Remember that cash flow is different from profitability, is different than revenue, obviously. So you just want to know all those things and make sure you have adequate cash flow because growth sucks cash.
Exactly. All right. Any final comments before we get out of here, Diana?
Mark, you might have been right.
Say that one more time.
I
Is
don't
this being
know. I
recorded?
mean, I do a big
I'm
caveat
going to
there.
put this on a loop and I'm going to make it my ringtone on my phone. Mark,
Oh my
you could have
gosh,
been
you
right.
really
Mark,
would.
you could have been right.
You
Mark,
really would. I think looking back, you were right. And I mean, I was a little right too. I mean, I can't say that you were completely right. I do think I could have put more money in your pocket, but we were ready to grow, and I was a little intrepid. So you were right.
yeah, it's all about risk tolerance. At
It
the
was
at
time.
that moment, my risk tolerance was pretty high. So
Well, in looking back at these pitfalls, we were ready. We had all the right systems and the right people, or at least you were putting them in place. And so you might have been right.
All right, I just want my producer to put that on my ringtone. All right. With that, I think we're out of time, so we got to get out of here. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Mark.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. So remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, remember to forward it to your friends. Hit that forward button on your phone. And if you want to talk some more, hit me up, marc@marcwhitehead.com. Marc spelled with a C. Love to get your comments, your feedback. A lot of people are asking me for some of our freebies that we give out, our marketing plan that we give out, and all that fun stuff. And be sure to visit us at successfulbarrister.com. And be sure to visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability law firm, at disabilitydenials.com. And with that, we're out of here.
Bye.